Gold was overbought. Silver was more overbought than it was in 1980, back at the peak. And what you've seen with both of them are high-level consolidations. Uh, the paper trade is waning and the physical market is growing. Uh, the physical markets are growing. Just look at what the BRICS are doing. I mean, they're opening storage facilities, refineries. They're very serious about accumulating both gold and silver. And it makes sense because, for years and years, they had, I guess the metaphor is tons. They had tons of dollars on their books, and now they're adding tons of real money on their balance sheet. Yeah, I forget what the number is. It's something like 473 ounces or something like that. But yeah, that's silver that's obliterated. Can never be reclaimed. And this in a market that is now in its fifth year of a structural deficit, supply and demand deficit. Well, obviously, price tells you that they're losing control, but let's not even talk about price. We did mention that we're in a structural deficit. We've had a supply and demand deficit for 5 years. And that's what happens when you get a small market size-wise as far as dollar amounts. I mean, the total production globally is only like $30 billion a year. But when you get a small market that's easy to manipulate, and if you're constantly manipulating to the downside and suppressing the price, what that does is it makes it much more difficult for producers to earn a profit, so they mine less silver. So, a direct consequence is the fact that we're in a structural supply deficit. Other things to look at, you can look at the lease rate on silver. You can look at the lease rate and the amount of shorts available on SLV, which is strictly paper. That's not actual physical silver. But the rates to borrow, it's blowing the shorts. The shorts are being blown up. No one can tell you that. And if they do, they're making up a number. I've said for years that on gold and silver, the numbers that we're going to go to are higher than anyone has projected of any number for gold or any number for silver. The actual number, I'm convinced, is going to be far higher than the most optimistic projection there is. And the reason being, gold and silver what they've done is they've sold paper contracts against gold and against silver that don't exist. And we're going to move into a failure to deliver scenario. And when that happens, man is a funny animal. When you tell man he can't have something, he wants it that much more.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're talking literally trillions of dollars that are going to be dislodged from the stock market, from the bond market, even from the crypto markets. And all that money is going to be pointed toward gold and silver. Those markets, I mean, especially silver being so small, they cannot handle the type of capital that's going to be heading toward a safe haven or the safe havens. And one other aspect of man, fear is the greatest emotion there is. And people are going to be moving money into gold and silver, not out of greed because, I can buy gold at 50 and I can sell it at 100 or 200 or whatever. That's not going to be the motivator. The motivator is going to be fear of losing everything in other markets and putting that money into something that is a safe haven and cannot bankrupt. That's the whole key. They can't bankrupt in a world that is defaulting. Well, the biggest lines you don't see, and I don't see, nobody sees them. The biggest lines are the electronic lines.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, once you get full-fledged movement from, family offices, hedge funds, they're smelling blood in the water. Once we get to that point, it's going to make what we've already seen look like not even just barely a starter. Silver's got many, many uses. It's not just industrial. I mean, you've got technological, you have medicinal. Go back hundreds of years. You remember the term, he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Well, only the wealthy people could afford silverware. And the reason they used silverware was because the antibacterial The
properties.
antibacterial that properties of silver, right? Exactly. Gold is basically strictly money, and silver for several thousand years was also money, but it has other uses. It has more uses than any other element on the planet. The reason I wanted to talk today about junk is because the pricing on junk versus other forms of silver have temporarily collapsed. I think dealers are bidding $4 and $5 under spot if you go to sell it, and you can buy it at spot, maybe 25, 50 cents over spot. It's the cheapest form of silver available right now. The reason being, back in the late 70s and the early 80s, I'm not going to say it was the only means, but the primary means of Americans that wanted to buy silver, the junk silver, that was really all there was available for investors. So you had, I don't know, well, you've had years since then too, but you had 5 or 10 years there where people were accumulating silver. They saw the $50 peak. You had some buyers, of course, at that level or in the 40s, and they hung on for 20, 30 years plus. What's happened is a lot of that legacy silver, when the price got to $50, people started selling. People and large hoards have been sold. What's happened is the dealers don't want to hold all of that as inventory. So if they're bidding 5%, 7%, 9% under spot, they take that junk in, they send it to a refiner, they refine the silver out of it, and then they sell that silver on the spot market, and that's how they make their profit. The problem long term, now this is a short term problem because refiners are backed up. Some refiners are even refusing to take more junk in. They're backed up. But once this backlog gets done, the discount will abate. It'll come back to spot or above spot. And going forward, there's way less junk silver left in existence because it got melted down. So if you're buying silver today and it's not an IRA account, it's foolish to not buy junk silver. It's the best form for an American to own, and it's the cheapest. They didn't ever come after our gold. I mean, I think there was a dozen people got fined or had jail time. There was no door-to-door knocking. There will never be door-to-door knocking. Can you imagine how many deaths there would be the first day if you had federal agents going house to house? Give me your gold, give me your silver. I mean, there wouldn't be out in rural areas, there would not even be a discussion. There would be a gunshot, the door would close, and that would be that. I do want to mention, you said about the great taking takes place.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a Mad Max scenario. I disagree with that entirely. As soon as the great taking starts to take over and people are realizing that they've lost everything, you're going to have absolute anarchy. And by definition, I mean, it's going to be a Mad Max world. Well, you get your assets into a position where they can't be taken. If you own stocks, get the certificates. I mean, owning bonds is a fool's game because no matter what happens, the debt's going to go to zero anyway. I mean, you're not going to get paid back. But if you've got big, large bank balances, buy gold. That's out of the system. It can't be taken from you unless they come and take it from you. So your preparations is to get out of the system. That's one preparation. The other preparations are for your life. Do you have ability to have clean water? Do you have the ability to create electricity if the grid's down? Do you have food supplies? Do you have a way to protect your position? That's all survival stuff. And I've recently, I think probably at least half of my last dozen interviews, I've mentioned On my website, there's an icon up top. It's called Grizzly's Corner. And those are articles and links provided in the articles written by a guy when he was younger, in his 20s and 30s. He used to take a pack of mules into central Idaho, which is probably the most unfriendly place in the continental US, and he'd go for 6 months and he'd survive and he'd come out and he'd be stronger for it. But this guy knows how to live off the land, and he's written articles. I'm not trying to blow my website's horn, but it's the best prepping resource that I've come across. I mean, this guy's just fabulous in some of the things he suggested. Well, first off, you need to be away from population. You need to make it difficult for 50 guys to show up at your front, on your property. So if you're more remote, you have better chances. And yeah, absolutely. You need probably a dozen people at least, because you've got to sleep. There's work that's got to be done. I mean, you can't do it all on your own. It's not doable.